A man who allegedly broke into a home on June the 17th of 2017 ended up in the hospital after he was beaten up by the individual who resided there. It was unbeknownst to 28-year-old John Alexander Bracken that someone was inside the Monroe Avenue residence when he kicked the front door in at around 9 p.m. A struggle then ensued between the burglar and the homeowner. After being notified of the break-in, law enforcement arrived and found the suspect laying in the front yard while the resident was reportedly uninjured. Bracken was taken to a medical center for treatment and later booked into the New Hanover County Jail in lieu of a $7,500 bond. He was facing charges of burglary, injury to personal property, and injury to real property. Number 10. Johnny Calderon Jr. and Gerald Allen. Two of the three men who attempted to pull off an armed robbery in Charlottesville, Virginia on August 27th of 2013 were left in blood and bruised in the face. During the robbery, one of the suspects, 19-year-old Johnny Calderon Jr., had his firearm knocked out of his hand by one of the victims. The two intended targets then attacked the would-be robbers. One of the suspects, who wasn't identified, subsequently seized the weapon and fled the scene as his partners were being pummeled. When law enforcement responded to the scene in the 2300 block of Fontaine Avenue, they found Calderon and Gerald Allen, aged 18, in the custody of the two unidentified male victims. The pair were reportedly taken to a hospital for treatment before being arrested. Both were charged with 2 counts of attempted robbery, while Calderon was additionally accused of pointing a firearm and using a firearm in the commission of a felony. Eventually, 2 counts of using a firearm in a felony were added to Allen's charges as well. Allen pleaded guilty and in 2015 was sentenced to 3 years in prison for the firearm offenses, while the 12-year sentence for attempted robbery was suspended. Calderon also pleaded guilty and faced the same punishment. Number 9. Exxon Gonzalez Caceres. At the Pilot Travel Center in Medley, Florida, a man attempting to steal a massive semi-truck was beaten up in a revenge pummeling on March the 9th of 2023. The incident took place on Northwest South River Drive when the alleged thief got into an unlocked semi-truck that was left running at a gas pump at approximately 10:30 a.m. The owner of the semi was in the store when he noticed that his blue 18-wheeler was in motion. He initially thought it was rolling by itself, but then saw a man behind the wheel. Footage of the theft was captured on camera as the victim chased after his stolen vehicle. The suspect floored it, seemingly trying to run over the men chasing him, and he consequently rammed into other cars. Eventually, the truck owner and another man were able to get the driver out of the cab and beat him up. According to Medley police, they were able to zip tie his hands and knees to immobilize him. Officers later arrested the suspect, identified as 24-year-old Exxon Gonzalez Caceres. In Miami-Dade court, Gonzalez Caceres was ordered to stay away from the gas station and the victim. He faced multiple charges, including battery, grand theft, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Number 8. Corey Kernot and Savannah Grillo. In 2019, a California couple carried out violent vigilante attacks on bike thieves and posted footage of the beatings on YouTube. 25-year-old Corey Kernot and Savannah Grillo, aged 29, would reportedly leave a bicycle unlocked in the front yard of their Visalia home and wait for someone to try and steal it. At least 4 people attempted to take the planted bike between July and November and were beaten with a baseball bat for their misdeeds. The injuries sustained by the would-be thieves were described as non-life-threatening by local law enforcement. A neighbor stated that there would be blood in the street or on the sidewalks after the contrived beatings. On January the 8th of 2020, Kernot and Grillo were detained on assault with a deadly weapon and conspiracy charges. The pair subsequently bailed out of jail and the videos of their assaults were taken down from the internet. The public information officer from the Visalia Police Department stated that investigators believed the couple's crimes were born out of frustration with ongoing vehicle burglaries in the area. Number 7. Liam Jones. Liam Jones, who'd formerly been convicted of various criminal charges, pulled out a bladed article on his friend during an argument over drugs. The incident, which took place in the town of Bargoed, South Wales in 2022, began when the 31-year-old smoked marijuana in a shed at Ashley Boylan's home. The latter accused Jones of stealing cannabis before a heated confrontation ensued. Jones pulled out a machete and swung it mere inches from his friend's face. Boylan then shouted to his partner, who was in the house with her children, to call the police. Jones took off carrying the weapon while Boyland and another man chased after him. He attempted to get into another residence but was pulled to the floor by his pursuers. He ultimately dropped the machete after Boyland picked up a piece of wood and hit him, leaving him with nasty injuries prior to his arrest. During Jones's trial, the prosecution highlighted the fact that he had previous convictions for robbery, burglary, wounding, and arson on his record. According to the man's lawyer, he suffered from an addiction to drugs and was diagnosed with ADHD. Wales Online reported on June the 9th of 2022 that Jones had been jailed for a year after admitting causing an affray and being in possession of a weapon. Number 6. Robber with a cardboard gun. On the night of January the 5th of 2019 in Rio, Brazil, a man who tried to rob a woman with a cardboard gun was punched, kicked, and locked in a rear naked choke before being arrested. 26-year-old Poliana Viana, a UFC fighter, was waiting for an Uber outside her apartment at around 8 p.m. when a man approached and asked her for the time. She answered, but he then continued lingering in close proximity to her. That was when the man told her to hand over her phone and not to cause a scene because he was armed. When the suspect put his hand over the weapon, Viana realized that it was a cardboard cutout and struck him with 2 punches and a kick. When the man fell, Viana subdued him with a chokehold from behind. Viana later said in an interview that the would-be robber then asked her to call authorities because he was afraid to be beaten up even more. In the aftermath, the man was left with a bloodied face. Nearby civilians called law enforcement, and the suspect was subsequently taken to a healthcare facility to have his injuries treated before being taken to the police station. The man had reportedly been arrested before and had just been released from custody shortly before the attempted robbery. Number 5. Anthony Nemeth. On Valentine's Day 2016, 25-year-old David West knocked an alleged robber down to protect his girlfriend who was behind the counter of a Walgreens pharmacy in Bradenton, Florida. West, who was visiting his girlfriend, who was working that night, when a masked man later identified as 26-year-old Anthony Nemeth jumped over the counter demanding all the oxycodone 30s in the store. Nemeth reportedly claimed he had a gun. A struggle, which was captured by a surveillance camera in the store, subsequently broke out as West tried to tackle the suspect. After throwing 4 punches, West took the man to the ground and held him down until authorities arrived. The suspect was then taken to Blake Medical Center for treatment. According to a police affidavit, no items were stolen and no firearm was found on the would-be robber. West told ABC News that he was simply protecting the one he loved. Nemeth, who was charged with first-degree attempted robbery, appeared battered and bloodied in his mugshot. According to online booking records for Manatee County, he was held in custody on a $15,000 bond. Number 4. Anthony Prestipine. Anthony Prestipine got beaten up with a frying pan after he allegedly tried to force himself on a Pennsylvania woman in November of 2015. The 33-year-old was invited by the woman to her Sharon home for a drink. According to the police, the two were watching a movie when the woman fell asleep. She told investigators that when she woke up, Prestipine was attempting to assault her. He was asked to leave, and when he refused, the woman hit him in the face with a skillet, leaving him with a large cut on his cheek, blood on his nose, and a black eye, all of which were displayed in his resulting booking photo. Prestipine was held in custody on an assault charge. Number 3. Anthony Hall. A serial burglar from Newcastle, England, was left with serious injuries after he broke into an ex-rugby player's home on September the 8th of 2014. 22-year-old Anthony Hall entered the Redcar residence belonging to 48-year-old Stephen Waterfield at around 12:30 a.m. Waterfield heard a noise and went to the living room where he saw Hall with both hands on his TV. Hall claimed that he thought it was his friend's property and subsequently lunged at the homeowner, who was once a flanker for Redcar's Union rugby team. Waterfield defended himself as the burglar reportedly bombarded him with kicks and punches. Eventually, the victim overpowered Hall and called the authorities. The suspect kicked Waterfield in the face as he attempted to flee. In his efforts to detain Hall, the ex-rugby player left him with gashes to his head, a bruised left eye, and a swollen cheekbone. Hall eventually left empty-handed but was arrested shortly thereafter. He later admitted to the burglary and was sentenced to 40 months in prison on November the 27th of 2014. Number 2. James Wood. 53-year-old James Wood of Aberdeen, Scotland, was left with 2 black eyes after stealing from his mother, Elizabeth, on December the 21st of 2014. After entering his mother's sheltered flat in the middle of the night, James took almost $300 from the 83-year-old's purse. His son, 25-year-old Matthew Wood, later discovered the money hidden inside a sofa at James's Torrey flat and reported it to the authorities. Before an arrest was made, James was allegedly beaten up by Matthew on January the 24th of 2015. When law enforcement took James into custody, he immediately confessed to the theft, but the cash was never recovered. At Aberdeen Sheriff Court, Wood was sentenced to 100 hours of unpaid work. He apologized, saying he was thoroughly ashamed by his behavior. His son also appeared in court, charged with assault causing severe injury, but he wasn't ultimately prosecuted due to a lack of evidence. The incident wasn't the first time James had stolen from his mother, explaining why he wasn't given a key to the mother's flat. According to the prosecution, James was said to have become an alcoholic after losing his job years earlier. For that reason, he claimed he couldn't even remember taking his mother's cash that night. We have our previous video about people who got caught for fabricating accusations lined up for you. 8 more people who probably wish they hadn't done the crime after getting caught red-handed. Stay tuned if you'd like. Number 1. Anthony Miranda. On December the 2nd of 2011, convicted felon Anthony Miranda attempted to rob a martial arts expert who left him with cuts and bruises on his face. In Chicago at around 11:30 p.m., a 33-year-old man, only identified as Justin, was sitting in his car near Kenneth Avenue and 55th Street. 24-year-old Miranda approached him and asked him if he had a lighter. When Justin replied that he didn't, Miranda allegedly brandished a handgun and profanely demanded money. According to authorities, after the victim gave up his money, the mugger told him to get out of the car. Justin subsequently gained control of the gun, causing Miranda to shoot his own ankle in the process. Miranda was then brought to the ground and restrained until police officers arrived. Before being booked into jail, the suspect was treated at Holy Cross Hospital. He was then charged with armed robbery and aggravated discharge of a firearm. According to the Cook County Sheriff's Office, Miranda's bond was later set at $350,000. Number 8. Faith Cox. Texas woman Faith Cox accused her boyfriend of assaulting her on September the 20th of 2017. She alleged that Christopher Procopia had entered her home and attacked her with a box cutter, leaving cuts on her face and chest. Fox claimed that he'd carved an X into her skin before fleeing the premises. Police took Procopia into custody on charges of first-degree felony burglary of a habitation with intent to commit additional felonies. He faced up to 99 years in prison for the alleged crimes. However, a police investigation uncovered that Procopia was entirely innocent. A selfie that he'd posted on Facebook around the same time that Cox claimed he'd assaulted her proved that he was 70 miles away from her home. An investigation into Procopia's text messages, cell phone tower pings, and witness reports confirmed his whereabouts and proved he hadn't been involved in the supposed attack. Moreover, police discovered that it was really Cox who'd inflicted the cuts on herself to frame Procopia. In light of the findings, law enforcement arrested and charged Cox with the misdemeanor of filing a false police report. She was ordered to pay a $2,000 fine and could have also been sentenced to up to 180 days in jail, but accepted a plea bargain which reduced her sentence to a year of probation. Number 7. Nikki Jovino. Teenager Nikki Jovino accused 2 college football players of abusing her while she was at a house party in New York on October the 15th of 2016. She alleged that the 2 men grabbed and took her into the basement bathroom where they forced themselves upon her. Following the accusations, the players were both suspended from their football team and had their scholarships taken away. However, according to the police, 18-year-old Jovino's story was riddled with inconsistencies, and she eventually admitted that her accusations had been a lie. When interrogated, the men she'd named as her aggressors admitted to have had intimate relations with her, but maintained that it had been fully consensual. Witnesses at the party also claimed to have seen Jovino willingly enter the bathroom with them and one attendee even audibly heard her say she wanted to sleep with both. After confessing, Jovino claimed she'd made up the story in a panic because she didn't want to ruin her relationship with another man with whom she was romantically involved. Jovino thought that her fabrication would cause her love interest to be compassionate towards her and angry at the two men instead. She was charged with second-degree, falsely reported an incident, and tampering with or fabricating physical evidence, resulting in a sentence of 1 year in jail and 3 years of probation. Number 6. Gemma Beale. In August of 2017, a 25-year-old London woman was sent to jail for 10 years after making several false abuse allegations over the course of several years. Between 2010 and 2013, Gemma Beale claimed to have been abused by 15 different men in 4 different incidents. One of the men she'd accused in 2010 was Mahad Kasim, who was wrongfully sentenced to 7 years in jail. However, in July of 2015, his conviction was reversed and he was set free after investigators uncovered a suspicious pattern of accusations by Beale, all with similar inconsistencies that indicated that she'd fabricated the stories. The woman was dubbed a serial liar, her motive being to receive compensation from each case she filed. She maintained her innocence throughout the trial that followed, but was ultimately found guilty of perjury and perverting the course of justice and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Number 5. Emery Ellis. A homeless man was arrested in November of 2015 after a cashier at a Boston Burger King thought he'd tried to pay for a meal using a fake $10 bill. Emery Ellis, aged 37, was charged with forgery of a banknote, which resulted in a probation violation from a previous offense. Because of that aspect, Ellis was taken to jail, where he was held without bail. 3 months later, in February of 2016, the Secret Service found that the $10 bill was in fact real. Ellis was released from jail and prosecutors dropped the forgery charge. The man went on to sue Burger King for nearly $1 million, claiming that he was discriminated against solely for looking like a homeless person of color. The outcome of the lawsuit remained undecided as of the latest updates on the matter. Number 4. Alexa Palobiki. 26-year-old Sacramento police officer Alexa Palobiki was accused of filing a false police report in May of 2021. The incident in question had been a traffic stop at a gas station where Palobiki alleged that she'd approached a driver for illegally parking. The officer searched the man's car on suspicion of a DUI, something she'd initially left out of her original report, but added at a later date after confiding in her fiancé, who was also a police officer. During the stop, Palobiki found what she'd claimed was an illegal substance, which really turned out to just be tobacco. An investigation carried out by Internal Affairs revealed that Palobiki hadn't had probable cause at all to stop the man. They also uncovered that she tried to come up with 6 different versions of the story with another officer to make up a reason for her to search the driver's car. An audit of her arrests and reports was conducted for 3 years worth of cases, combing through interviews, body cam footage, and surveillance footage, as well as her phone records. Investigators highlighted at least 5 separate incidents of misconduct on Palobiki's part. She misrepresented or left out important facts about what happened during the incidents, in addition to reporting pursuits that never happened, failing to include suspect statements, and even earning overtime payment on days when she left work early. The driver's case was eventually dropped. Once the information came to light, Palobiki was fired from her job on November the 18th of 2021 and charged with 2 counts of falsifying police reports. If convicted, she could face up to 3 years in prison. Number 3. Kirsten Faith Snyder. On March the 24th of 2021, a South Carolina woman made a home invasion and assault report, which ultimately proved to be a fabrication. 22-year-old Kirsten Faith Snyder claimed that someone had cut her kitchen screen, broken into her house, and assaulted her. Deputies rushed to what they believed was a burglary in progress as Snyder was on the phone with the 911 operator, actively reporting on what was happening during the alleged incident. However, when officers arrived on the scene, Snyder told them that the intruder had fled through the kitchen window after she'd allegedly fought him off. During their investigation, the authorities were able to piece together that a break-in never happened and that Snyder had not been assaulted. The woman was later charged with filing a false police report of a felony and was arrested on a $10,000 personal recognizance bond. Number 2. Kaviana Zachariah Taylor. On May the 22nd of 2022, a Florida woman reported a crime that led to a SWAT raid at her boyfriend's home. 20-year-old Kaviana Zachariah Taylor told a 911 dispatcher that her boyfriend hit her in the face with a gun after a physical altercation had broken out between them while they were sitting in his car outside of his home. It had allegedly started when the man took Taylor's work ID badge and slapped her with it. She retaliated by punching him in the side of the head, which led to the fight inside the vehicle. Taylor then reportedly got on top of him with her knees in his chest, which is when he reportedly reached for his handgun. She eventually managed to kick him out of the car, got into her own vehicle and called 911 before leaving. However, when officers questioned her about the incident, the woman said that her boyfriend hadn't actually hit her with the gun. Taylor claimed that her busted lip was a result of him punching her instead, which contradicted what she'd initially told the 911 dispatcher. Because of the nature of the call, the police department had sent the SWAT team, believing Taylor was in serious immediate danger. Her boyfriend was taken to the police department for questioning, and his handgun was confiscated as evidence. He told a completely different story, stating that Taylor had taken money from him and began to punch him when he tried to retrieve it. She'd also broken his car's window with a tire iron. The man even provided a text message sent by Taylor threatening to call the police and lie that he'd attacked her with a gun. With evidence backing up her boyfriend's story, Taylor was arrested and charged with simple battery, simple assault, providing false information to law enforcement, and making a false 911 call. She was held on a $10,000 bail and eventually admitted to have fabricated the story. Number 1. Lewis Mearns and Brandon Burrows. In September of 2020, British woman Lorraine Cox was walking home when she was murdered by Azam Mangori, aged 24, in his apartment above a kebab shop. Mangori, who was just a tenant in the apartment and had no connection to the business below him, was found guilty of Cox's murder in April of 2021. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 20 years served. However, in the early stages of the investigation, two friends of Cox's in their mid-20s, Lewis Mearns and Brandon Burrows, were convinced that the staff of the kebab shop were somehow involved in her murder. On October the 2nd of 2020, they ganged up on Naveed Rahimi, the shop's chef. In front of his home, they called him racial slurs and accused him of killing Cox before they physically assaulted him. Upon their arrest, Mearns and Burrows tried lying to the police by saying that they were elsewhere at the time of the incident. However, DNA evidence found on a drink can at the scene, the location on their phones, and eyewitness testimony from a passerby proved that they'd been responsible for the attack. Both men were found guilty of racially aggravated battery and were given sentences of 10 to 11 months in prison. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be shot once in your leg or get beaten up by an MMA fighter for half an hour? Let us know in the comments section below.